I'm so honored today to welcome one of our own and repeat speakers, James Morgan. If you don't know James, hopefully you will in the near future get to talk with him personally. He used to serve as a full-time pastor, spent 20 years behind the pulpit. And I am so glad that, most people deconvert, and we gained so much when you deconverted. So let's just give a really great warm welcome to James Morgan.
Hi, everybody. All right. Hey, so why don't we start off talking about musical theater? Do we have any musical theater fans here this morning? Great. Admitting you have a problem is the first step towards getting help, so appreciate that. So there's an element of musical theater you may be familiar with. It's called the I Want song, and it's where the protagonist introduces themselves to the audience, and they do so by stating what they really want, what their deepest desires, deepest wish are. So a few examples of that would be Snow White, right? When she comes on the scene, she's singing the song I'm Wishing, and she's wishing that she'll meet someone that she loves. From the look on the face of the dwarves, they're wishing that they could get her alone and liquored up. The Lion King is another classic I wish moment where he just can't wait to be king. Scar can't wait to kill everybody in the photo. And then there's this, probably the most famous and perfect example of the I Wish song is The Little Mermaid. And remember, I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing, walking around on, what do you call them? Thank you. All right. So this morning I will not be singing, but I would like to share with you my desire, my wish. This is in some ways my wish song for my kids. The title of this morning's talk is Rules to Live By. 8 things, but I whittled it down to 7. 7 things that I desperately want my kids to know. So I'll just do a little disclaimer here. My wife and I together have 7 children. I have 4 biological kids related to me, 3 bonus kids. Just because we have a lot of kids doesn't make us good parents. We don't really know what kind of parents we are yet. I mean, we'll know in about 20 years. I would say that the loaf is still baking. So we'll know how we did later. I'm not a life coach. I'm not an expert on parenting. There are some people that would think I'm a horrible parent, perhaps. But these are things that I want to instill into my children. And they're not everything that I want to teach them. These are 7 rules that I want them to grasp, but they're not all the rules. In fact, I learned a couple rules this morning that I could also share. Number 1, don't pee in a fridge. That's a rule. That's a rule we have in our house. If you're burying a homie, don't put any ammo in their clothing. It's just a good rule. So there's lots of rules I could share. These are just the 7 off the top of my head. So here, are we ready? Ready to go? So rule number 1 that I want my kids to know, there are 2 sides to every story, and until you know both, you don't really know anything. I believe that. So when I was a Christian, one of my favorite Bible verses, and most of it, the vast majority of it, I now reject with all my heart. But there is some good stuff in there, and one of the really great passages is from Proverbs, and I love this. It essentially says, the first person to make their case always seems right until someone comes along and examines them. Isn't that true? That is just so true. You hear a story from one person. If that's the first time you've heard the story, then you think, oh, this is what truth is. And then someone comes along and goes, well, wait a second, you really should know this. And I think that's just a great, great rule in life. I wish I had known that back when I went to Bible college as a brand new believer. I'd spent like a decade wasted, stoned, came up out of it, put down the pot pipe and went off to Bible college and learned from some people all of these things that they stated as being completely true, absolutely factual. You can trust these things. And I just thought, man, I'm learning so much. What a great education. How I wish there had been someone there, a rebuttal. Would have been awesome to have people come up and go, here's the other side to that little story. And so I spent a good deal of my life thinking that I knew the truth, when the fact of the matter is, because I only knew one side of the story, I didn't really know anything. And that's not just a problem for Bible college students, it's a problem for humans in general. I noticed on my phone the other day that there's an app, it's also on my iPad, it's called News, and when you first open it up, it'll give you the opportunity to determine what kind of news you want to see in your feed. So, and I was looking at this is really interesting. If I wanted to, like someone could choose just liberal or progressive news stories, right? And say, well, I only want to hear from MSNBC and the Huffington Post. And then I'm sure other people get that app and go, I only want to hear from Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. And I was thinking, what different worldviews these people, each one of them getting up in the morning thinking that they're just reading the news, but they would be reading very different things. And I just thought, I don't want my kids to live with that sort of mentality. I want them to know that there are two sides to every story. There's two sides to every issue, that life is complicated. And if all you know is one side of the story, then you don't really know anything at all. So that's my first, number one rule. I want my kids to seek out and have conversations with people who think differently than they do. I want that for all of us, that we would literally seek out conversations with people who think about things differently than we do, so that we can be well-rounded and come closer to us ascertaining the truth. All right, so number two, that was number one. Number one, don't, two sides of every story. Number two, don't be intimidated by time. So this is Emily. Where is she? There's Emily. She loves animals. Loves animals, would really truly desire to be a veterinarian. But the problem is for Emily, it's going to take too much time. Was it like 7 years of schooling? So she wants to be a vet. She loves animals. It's just going to take too much time. This next person, this is Brad. He wants to get in shape, but he's been exercising for 2 weeks. He's only lost half a pound, and he can only do 2 more push-ups than he could 2 weeks ago. And he's not ready for that kind of commitment. Takes too much time. And so he is going to give up the way that Emily is going to give up, certainly simply because of time. I would submit to you that both Emily and Brad are stupid. No, I'm just kidding. They're not. They're unwise, right? They're unwise, because one of the things that I realize is someone who's down the road a bit, the time goes by. And we should not be intimidated by time. If you really want something, go after it and quit worrying about how much time it's going to take. I can't tell you how many young people I've spoken with are like, oh, I don't want to go to college. It takes a whole 4 years. I'm like, what the heck? And when you know as you get older, like it goes by like that. 8 years med school, who cares? I would learn to play the guitar, but it takes too much time. Think of all the things that you could do in life if you just gave up using time as an excuse. So I really want my kids to make decisions that are not based on time. And so here's something I really believe, that slow, incremental change over a long period of time can produce extraordinary results. I want my kids to know that. Like, you are so far ahead. Even if you're going so slowly, you are light years ahead of the person who won't get off the couch. And just that slow, incremental progress, even if it was only half a pound a week. Who wouldn't like to? I mean, some of you wouldn't. Some of you are skinny as a rail, but most of us, like half. If you lost half a pound every 2 weeks, that's 12 pounds in a year. I would love to weigh 12 pounds less in a year, right? Slow, incremental change over time can produce extraordinary results. How many people are going to commit to become a veterinarian this morning, just from what I've shared? You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, so that's my second one. Don't be intimidated by time. Number 3 and 4, I'm putting them together. Number 3, eat like Granny. Number 4, move like Jagger. These are things I want my kids to know. So let's start off with Granny. This is not my granny. She was happier than this miserable old biddy. But I've been somebody. My kids, like a lot of American kids, I worry about their health. I worry about their eating habits. I only have my kids, not even quite half the time, 50% of the time. I don't have total control over what they eat, but I really want them to eat like a grandma. I wish I had learned this earlier in my life. This is me in my 20s. That's me on the left. That's me at about 28 years old. I spent all of my 20s being about 45 pounds heavier than I am right now. And that's not huge, but in this picture, I'm about to eat the man on my left. So I got bigger afterwards. But this is something that I wish I had thought about and cared about earlier in life, and I want my kids to really think about this. So I want them to eat like Granny. What do I mean by that? Here she is. Well, number one, Granny, she didn't eat at buffets. That's my grandmother, my great-grandmother, really didn't know what a buffet is, so I want my kids to avoid buffets. These are all general rules. It's not like you can never go to a buffet. I had a donut this morning. I'm going to be honest with you. But I feel like Grandma would have done it. I do. So Granny didn't eat at buffets. Granny's plates were much smaller than the average plate that Americans use today. We actually, our plates would have been called a platter back in the day. So I try and serve, Michelle and I eat off of small plates as much as we can. I'm always trying to feed my kids off of the smaller plates. I want them to see a normal size American plate and go, what the heck is that? So small plates. Granny didn't eat anything from a factory, like great-grandma's food. Literally, my great-grandmother was Eleanora DiDio. She didn't know what a Hot Pocket was. She never saw a McNugget in her life. So avoiding foods from factories, I really want my kids. Of course, this is not a hard and fast thing, but I would love for my kids to avoid food from factories, food served on large plates, buffets, things of that sort. Basically, a great rule of thumb is to only eat foods that your grandmother would recognize, and I think she would have stared down that donut and known exactly what it was. Number 4, eat like Granny, move like Jagger. That's my next rule. So I'm not saying that we should actually emulate the diet exercise habits of Mick Jagger. Although I did some research just out of curiosity. I guess he works out quite a bit, has a personal trainer, and hats off to him. He's still, touring at 70 years old. But that's not really what I'm getting at. It's just a placeholder for the idea that I really want my kids to be active and to keep moving. One of the things that we've learned in the last few years is that chairs are extremely dangerous to us. In fact, a lot of people feel that the chair is the new smoking. And I just think about my children. If they were left to their own devices, they would only eat factory-produced packaged food, and they would sit and stare at their screen or some screen all day long. They would. We have to fight to get them to go outside sometimes. And so one of the rules that I'm trying to get across to my kids is to just be active. And you don't have to be, super active to get a tremendous amount of results. According to the CDC, just 25 minutes of exercise a day, it's about 150 minutes a week. So just 25 a day will reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, many types of cancer, will strengthen your bones and muscles, right? And you want strong bones because when you're burnt to a crisp, like having... it improves your mental health and mood, and it increases your chances of living longer and not having to meet this gentleman in a non-social setting. So... those are numbers 3 and 4. Eat like Granny, move like Jagger. I desperately want my kids to know that, to understand those things. Number 5, I want them to spend more time learning how to create a PowerPoint that doesn't cut off the top of the words. Apparently, I used a font that is not native to that computer. My font was stylish. It's good looking. Number 5, spend a significant amount of time doing things that are important but not urgent. And if you remember, this is kind of review for some of you. I just became a Brooklynite for a moment. I'm sorry. This is the time management matrix. Remember this from last time I spoke? So, all of your time can be divided into these 4 quadrants, the way that we spend our time. So quadrant number 1, things that are urgent and important, like, the mortgage is due, your car payment's due, your shirt's on fire, like all of these things are urgent and important. Number 3, urgent but not important. That's like, a phone call that you answer it and then it's nothing, or an email. Not important, not urgent. That's like, Game of Thrones binge marathon. That's number 4. Number 2 is an important quadrant. It's the one that most people overlook. Doing things that are important but not urgent. And it's into this category that you have things like taking care of your health and exercise. Education is important. It's not necessarily urgent. No one's going to come to your door and make you become a veterinarian. Your career, having good relationships. No one's going to make you call your mom. It's not urgent in a sense, but it is important, those sorts of things. And so for me, the reason why I have this on my list is because quadrant number 2 is where the majority of our strategic thinking takes place. And I really want my kids to live strategically. That's important to me, that I want them to think about not just what's in front of them or what the next 10 minutes or the next 10 days hold, but what the next 10 years or the next 10 decades, if they live that long, to really think about having a target. Do you know what happens when you don't have a target? You have to shop at Walmart. I don't want that for my kids, right? Right. Not having a target is the sure, if you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it, right? All of those sorts of things. So I want my kids to be thinking about what kind of life they want to live, what sort of people they want to be around, the choices that they want to make for career and health and all of these things. I don't want them to be intimidated by time. I want them to be talking to people that don't see the world the same way that they do so they can learn and grow and hear both sides of the story. And while they're doing all of that, I want them to take care of their bodies and get up off the couch and move. These are all the things that I want for my kids, including number 6. And number 6 is that they would avoid lying like the plague. Do you remember this guy from, also, I'm just doing my greatest hits thing here this morning. This is Robert Waldinger. He's the current director of the longest study on human health and happiness ever. It's been a 75-year study. He inherited it in a sense. It's been tracking the lives of Harvard students and these kids from a really poor neighborhood in Boston, and looking at, like, how did their lives turn out? How, did they end up being happy and healthy and all of these things? And the result of the study was this. He boiled down the whole study to this. The clearest message we get from this 75-year study is that good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. Isn't that amazing? 75 years of study. Education, diet, exercise, all of those things probably important, but the number one important thing is having good relationships. In fact, he went on to say from the study, people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community, they're happier, they're physically healthier, they live longer than people who are less connected. And that's why part of my I wish song, the thing that I want, is that my kids would be honest and trustworthy, because this is the big idea here. It is impossible to have a close and healthy relationship with people that you cannot trust. And the best way to destroy trust is to get caught lying. And this is something that my wife and I have come to know, firsthand. As a lot of you know from my story, that while I was a pastor for 20 years, I ended up deciding that none of it was true. And I spent 2 years still in the pulpit trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What does this mean for my life, my family? How do I get myself out of this situation? And so I spent 2 years pretending to be a believer when I wasn't. And the result of that has been there are hundreds of people who hate me and want nothing to do with me, and maybe rightly so. And one of the things that my wife and I have determined, we just don't want to be people that are not trustworthy and not honest. And so when you break people's trust, you break that relationship. If the most important aspect of life is having good relationships, then lying works against that, and therefore it's a really bad idea. So we want our kids to be honest and to avoid lying like the plague, unless there's a lot of money at stake, in which case that's fine. Number 7, the place to be happy is here. The time to be happy is now. Again, something that you've heard me talk about in the past. I drive my my biological oldest kids to high school 3 days a week, and I can't tell you how often, more often than not, they complain their way to school. And one of the phrases that is common to them that drives me nuts is, I hope this day goes by fast. Get that all, today is algebra day. I hope it goes by fast. And it's everything within me not to just pull the car over, and it's like, you stop it. Life goes by fast enough all on its own. It goes by so quickly. Do not wish for it to go by even more so. But enjoy. I always tell them there's something in this day that you can enjoy. There's something that's going to take place today that you can be excited about. Number one, you're not in a war-torn country. Most of the problems you have are first world problems. You're young and relatively healthy, and you've got a fantastic dad. Let's just stop and think about that for a minute. So many reasons to be happy. But kids, like so many adults, we think about this whole idea of I'll be happy when, right? So when I graduate, when I'm done with school, when I get married, when I lose 10 pounds, and we defer our gratification. We spend our whole lives wishing our time away, and it's really sad. So one of the things that I always do before we go on a long vacation, I will do it again in a couple weeks, because big shock, we're going to California again. When we get in the car, when we're still in the driveway, I make this little speech that goes something like this. Vacation starts now. Not 26 hellish, grueling, we will want to kill each other hours from now when we arrive. But vacation starts now. We begin to throw grandma's eating rules out the window right now and enjoy the trip, enjoy the journey, because the journey is the destination. It really is. A lot of research has been done in this field, in this topic, and a lot of times what people find is that the happiness that you think you're going to experience when you finally complete a goal, you finally got done with your college education, you finally got that promotion. A lot of times, the only thing that you feel in that situation, it's no more joyous than just taking off a backpack and setting down a weight. And so the thing is, if you're always waiting for that big moment, you miss out on life. Be happy here. Be happy now. The journey is the destination. Find something to enjoy right this moment, which is easy for you to do because that was a fabulous talk. So let's wrap things up, right? The I want song, the I wish song. I'd like to finish things out this morning by singing to you all 7 of my points. So number 1, there are 2 sides to it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that have been awesome though? It'd been totally awesome. Yeah. Nah, couldn't do it. Anyway, so 2 sides to every story. Until you know both, you don't know anything. Number 2, don't be intimidated by time. You got something you really want, go for it. Who cares if it's going to take years or decades? What does it matter? Especially if you can figure out a way to make money doing something you love. Man, that's worth spending a lot of time on. Eat like Granny, right? Eat the stuff that Granny would recognize. Take good care of your body as much as you can. Move like Jagger. The chair is the enemy. Spend a significant amount of your time being strategic about your life, and try and spend a good deal of time in quadrant number 2, doing things that are not urgent, but are extremely important. Number 6, avoid lying like you would avoid the plague. And then lastly, number 7, the place to be happy is here, right now, wherever you're at, whatever's going on. The time to be happy is now. And you should be happy because I'm done. All right, thanks.